Let's do it. Pastor Tally Wilgus, welcome to the first ever Reframed podcast. This is the part where we pretend like we didn't just spend 10 minutes saying hello and talking like you just walked in the door.
Absolutely.
Sound good?
Welcome. Good to see you.
Yeah, man, you too. We've got a little bit of history, which we can start with that. You know, I don't know, what would it be, maybe 2012, 2013 when we first met?
Sure.
When you were in,
Let's run with that.
you were in the Hunt Valley years.
Yeah.
Let's call it whatever that was. So we've worked off and on a couple different times. So I get the strange advantage of knowing you a little bit, but I want to pretend that I don't because I want to hear your point of view. The idea behind Reframed and the reason we're calling it that for now, maybe it changes, I don't know. I want to look at ministry a little bit differently. Like I feel like people have a very traditional view of there's the pastor, the worship leader, the children's pastor, and all of the ministry happens here, which is very far from the truth. And we know that it's part of how ministry happens. But the advantage of knowing you, what really does fascinate me about your story is it is not the standard way that people plant churches.
Yeah.
I think you would agree, yeah? But before we get into that, if you could just kind of give your background. I know you grew up in East Baltimore, and that can kind of point us in the right direction for where we're going today.
Yeah. I appreciate you having me here. I was born and raised in inner city East Baltimore. My father and my mom got together when they were 16. My mom went to a Planned Parenthood for just medical care, and they looked for a baby, and they couldn't find me actually in the sonogram. So I tell people I was doing the Matrix, you know,
Ninja baby.
Like, whoa. So I sent out. So my mom went home. She's like, I know I'm still pregnant, even though they told me I wasn't. And so she just found it in her heart that she wanted to have the child. And obviously I'm grateful for that. But we grew up poor. My dad wasn't really in the picture at all. And ultimately, most of my childhood was framed in inner city housing projects in Baltimore.
Yeah.
So growing up, I was ultimately, God allowed me to go on through a lot of series of events to graduate high school.
Yeah.
I'm the first in my family for 5 generations to do that.
Wow.
And then went on to college and a master's and all that. But yeah, so my life growing up was pretty rough, pretty violent, lots of drugs and all of that stuff, running around the neighborhood. But the Lord saw fit to save me, and I'm pretty excited about it.
It's awesome, man. And from high school, went on to Liberty University, yeah?
Yeah.
Here's something I'm interested in. Because I know you, I know your genuine passion for Baltimore City, for Maryland. When did that start? When you were called to ministry, did you always know you were coming back here? No,
I was actually running a little bit of a Jonah situation in some ways. My undergrad, first of all, is in law. I wasn't even wanting to come into ministry. So I have an undergraduate degree in government, and my master's is in religion. But during that season, I just thought I was going to go to law school. And but the Lord had my best friend working in a ministry in Corpus Christi, Texas, and he said, hey, come down and hang out for a summer and be an intern. And so I went down there, helped him out for the summer. And really, that's when the Lord called me to ministry itself. But I always had, in ministry, I had an eyeball towards the urban environment. And so I did ministry in Corpus Christi, Texas, Virginia Beach, Virginia, started a church when I was 25. And all my ministry always kind of revolved around it, but I never wanted to come back home. Yeah. And the North American Mission Board, which is kind of a mission sending agency, they contacted me and said, hey, would you come back to Baltimore? And I told them no for 6 months. I really did. And finally, it kept working up. Every call I got was from a higher guy up the chain. And finally, they said, look, we're holding your spot. We believe God called you home. And so I said, well, hold it, but you're wasting your money. So one day I was driving down 83. I was up here visiting my mom, and I was driving down 83, and around Charles Street, the highway opens up over the city, and you could see downtown more clearly. Yeah. And that's when God really got a hold of my heart and said, look, I'm calling you back home. I want you to come back here and make a difference. Up until that point, I wouldn't have said it, but truth is, I was discouraged and defeated and frustrated, and I wanted nothing to do with the city, but the Lord called me back.
In that moment, was it did you have peace, or was it like more of an anxious, I guess I'll do this?
No, it was kind of a peace, like I got you. You know, I'm your dad. You know, I didn't have a dad growing up, and So it's kind of like dad's just saying, hey, you can't trust yourself right now, but you can trust me.
Yeah.
I prepared you for this.
It's another crazy part of your story. You've been a friend to me. You've been a boss to me. You've been a mentor to me. Someone who can say grew up without a dad, I would say that you're probably one of the best father figures I've ever met. Just your kids are evidence, man. Just hanging out with them for 10 minutes. How did growing up without a dad drive that? Because I know people always worry about like the chain being broken. Am I going to be just like my dad? I'm going to do the same things. What was the difference?
So for me, it was a matter of I legit looked at everything my biological father was doing. And I said, if he's so bad at doing this, if I will make every opposite decision, I will probably be all right.
That's so simple.
So basically, when people think, what would Jesus do? It was like, what would my biological father do?
Let's do the opposite
I'm
of
going to
that.
do the opposite. So
It's crazy though, because a lot of people like will call it genetics. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like even if they're like so I got the best and worst of my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and for a time I didn't think it was genetic, but I thought, well, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
You know, my dad, loving man, awesome man, great relationship. The worst human in the world with money. I mean, his whole life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every month he's borrowing from here to pay there. And that's how I lived my life until God brought Jen into my life. And now I have a wife who said, hey, this is really dumb.
yeah.
And it's taken 9 years of marriage for us to get on the right track.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's cool, man. I like
Yeah.
that.
The other thing I think is sometimes we feel defeated by our genetics or by our past, or we kind of take on the story of other people's story. We
Yeah.
don't know how they got there,
Yeah.
but we're just like, well, I'm related to them. And part of the reality of what God has gave me was himself. Like I can look at the scriptures and I can see what a good father looks like. You know, I can learn how Jesus walked and dealt with people and say, man, I can mimic that. So even though I didn't have, the model in my home, sometimes I just think especially as believers, we have a model available to us. So
Right.
Just say, hey, what would my Heavenly Father do?
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Growing up in Baltimore City, this is I've just got some talking points here. We'll jump around. There's no, I think you know us well enough to know that we're not going to stay on task anyway in this situation. But I do want to talk about, you've been given or entrusted with 2 different buildings. One is the church that you came up in. That's right?
Yeah, so we got on the ground to start our church. We started in Towson, and part of my proposal when I went back to the mission board and I said, okay, fine, I'll come up. I said, you're going to leave me alone for a year so I can get to know the area again, come back home, and then you're going to let me do what I want.
Yeah.
I already have a church in Virginia Beach. I didn't need a bunch of people amening me, but if we're going to make a difference, then I need you to leave me alone. And so I gave a proposal, but unbeknownst to my home church when I was a kid, unbeknownst to those folks, part of the proposal was we're going to build this thing outside the city so that we can have an intentional impact in the city.
Yeah.
And so once I got home, there was about a dozen folks in inner city East Baltimore meeting at this church that I grew up in. And they said, look, we all moved away. We're all Caucasian. We're all in our 60s and 70s. And we just want to entrust the property to somebody who understands our heart.
Yeah.
And so the church had 215 years of history, and I wasn't going to turn my back on that. So
Yeah.
so they entrusted it to me, and right away we got started with loving on the city.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't so I was telling Steven, our producer, Steven, earlier today, something that's incredibly unique about you and something that really excites me. We live in a world of Elevation Church and Bethel Church and Saddleback and all these things. There seems to be a pretty clear model of what American church is, right? It's big, it's beautiful, it's wealthy, it's the stadium church. I have had many conversations with you. I know that you could go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. I know that there's a lot of easy streets for you to take, and you just don't. Mm-hmm. How many years now? When did you start church in Maryland?
We're coming up on 10 being here on the ground. Yeah.
And I would say 10 great years, but 10 hard years. Not the, everything just goes the right way. You know what I mean? And I feel like I can say that because I work there, but I know why you stick it out, but I would love if you could share why you don't just go an Elevation Church route, because I think that's what's special. Yeah,
and and to be fair to those guys, I've been blessed. When we launched the church, Larry came up. He's one of their key staff members, and he came up and loved on us and taught us. And so I value what they do. It's just not it's just not us.
Yeah. And I want to be clear too. I agree. There's no bashing. That is a route that's doing a lot of ministry.
Yeah. So those, but yeah, when we look at our context and where we are, and what I feel called to especially is we've had generations of white flight where we had redlining, we had inner city poor that basically they were told, listen, you can't buy a house in certain neighborhoods and things like that. So then you got generations of white flight where African Americans moved towards the downtown area, and so Caucasians, with the advent of transportation, started to move out. So what that happened is generation after generation, you've got these people that just like moving away from each other and from the challenges. And so when I look at the scripture, I just see that all tribes, all tongues, all nations, all peoples, all socioeconomics. And so as a result, I think the big box model or the saddleback model or, all these models, it really relies in a big way on a monolith kind of picture. You kind of literally have to take a Saddleback Sam and just say, who's our market? And that was literally in books, like figure out your market. And at the time, it was, maybe innovative for the church to think, a little more critically about what we're doing. But I think it kind of gone too far. So for here in Baltimore, we have such a diverse population, so much complexity. One of the things I love about Baltimore is its grittiness, its quirkiness, its difference. And so you can't really label. I mean, go ahead and try. What's a Saddleback Sam for Baltimore? So that's why, we just said, look, we're going to go to the places where nobody else wants to be. We're going to plant a flag. We're going to be there a long time. We're going to be honest with our people. And it's not about me. At the end of the day, I don't need my name on anything. We just need to love the Lord and love people. Yeah.
Something I always say in my band when we travel, when people say you're from Baltimore, what's it like? Like, what are the fans like there? And I say, I don't know if this is not my phrase, but I say it's a fierce loyalty. Meaning if they love you, they will die for you. They will kill for you. It's wild, whether it's the Orioles or music or whatever it is. And I think you've seen some of that at Captivate, right? You've got that almost 10-year span. You've got people from the beginning.
Yeah, and they're all different. The interesting thing is I was invited last year to consider taking a church outside of Atlanta. And that was the first time in the 9-10 years that I had ever even paused to ask my wife to pray. And but ultimately, in talking to mentors and praying, decided not to and stick with it. And a part of that was I looked around at our congregation, and that fierce loyalty you're talking about, it's from inner city black teenagers. It's from my 84-year-old elder. It's from people in business. It's from people that are poor, and really, what it is, it's just share Jesus. It's they know that you love them, and they know that you care. And vice versa. I know that they would go through a wall for me. So the idea is just to keep building that one soul at a time. Do
you think it gets lost in, again, there's no hate towards elevation, but I think that creates a false reality, a false goal. Like, there are people who are called to that. They're meant to build that. That is exactly their ministry. But I think for you as a pastor, for me as a pastor, for me as a musician, like, you get this delusions of grandeur. Like, if I'm not playing to a stadium, am I really doing anything? But then, like, exactly what you're talking about, which is where maybe it is that handful of people. Like, are we not, like, Jesus took 12 guys. He broke that down to 3 after that. And that's the only reason we're in this room talking. You have those moments, right, in Scripture where he's talking to, it's the Sermon on the Mount, or he feeds the 5,000. They're pretty rare. They're pretty few and far between, and he wasn't seeking them.
And with the Happy Meal story, as I like to call it, he sends them away hungry later. So even the gathering itself wasn't the end of that story. But yeah, no, it's not I don't know. For me, it's not really a pride either way. If God decided tomorrow to run the heavens, and suddenly more and more people were attracted to the commitment and the passion we have for loving the world. I mean, I want to see more and more people meet Jesus. And so I genuinely don't care. If God chose to do that to where it was all in one building and a lot of people, that'd be great. But I do think the pointed part of your question is really the heart of the pastor or the shepherd or the minister, or why are we doing what we're doing? At the end of the day, if I'm doing it because I want to pretend to be in somebody else's shoes, or I want to have what they have, or I mean, I'm violating 3 or 4 commandments, from the beginning. So it's like, I shouldn't go into anything like that. I should go into it just saying, Lord, the results are yours. Like Absolutely. At the end of the day, I got to be faithful with what I wake up with every day and how I approach people, how I love well, how I care for my wife and my kids. At the end of the day, those results are going to be the Lord's. I can't be lazy about it and then blame it on, somebody else that's doing well.
Yeah.
But the other thing too, when we first got here, man, I was like, man, what could happen here? And, but the reality is, man, we live in an area here in Baltimore. It's 3.86% evangelical. People that say that they have a mission from God to go out and share the love of Jesus with other people. That's less than 4%.
Yeah.
And you go down to a lot of these areas where we got our Christian heroes, and listen, it's 60%, 65%.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, you're just in a different market. In India, you're not going to sell very many hamburgers, so so you don't want to go into a market believing that you're the problem if what you're selling is just not appealing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you got to go out, love Jesus, love people, be faithful, and let God be, the rewarder of your work.
Absolutely. I feel like we want measurements for our faith, like how good of a Christian are we, like how close to Jesus am I? And a lot of times I really think the only one we have is obedience. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like I cannot control how people receive what we do. Mm-hmm. I can't control whether or not they give their lives to Jesus. I got nothing. Yeah. All I can do is do what he told me. And I've always been drawn to pastors like that. It's the reason I was drawn to you. It's the reason I'm here. People who just, at the end of the day, like, can we just tell people Jesus loves them? Can we live it out and see where it goes from there? Yeah. It's awesome. Talk to me about Dundalk. That's the other building. So you've got a Towson location. Mm-hmm. Are we still in the theater?
We are.
Okay.
At the moment, yeah.
And that is, what theater is that?
We're at the Cinemark, the brand new theater, a couple years old, I guess.
Okay. So if you're listening to this and you need to check it out, then you have the East Baltimore location, and then Dundalk was another building that, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but it had several churches, right? Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't working. And you've been there for how long now?
We're right around 4 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was, they were founded in 1960 or so, built the building for 300 and some seats, 320 or so. And they've, since I asked one of the deacons who stayed on when we took over the property, I said, when's the last time you had, 100 people in here? And he started tearing up, and he said 1970, and he just drifted off. And I'm like, wow. So you guys built the building in 60, and by the mid-70s, it was empty. So, I mean, these are a faithful few. You talk about faithfulness. I mean, we all stand on the shoulders of somebody else's faithfulness. And so really our spirit, the same in East Baltimore, has been to be a good steward and to go in, preach the gospel, love people well. And so that's kind of been what we've been about. And it looks different than our Towson. If you visited them both, you've been to both. And, I mean, you would play both. And so it's just a different vibe, but it fits. It fits the community. And so that's all we want to do. And you're still preaching at both, right? I am.
On Sundays?
By the time this is out, it might not be. But
okay.
Yeah, so
all right.
We have an African-American guy named Tyrell Brown that we've ordained, and he's been with me a couple of years and been faithful.
Awesome.
And going back to what I said earlier, my name doesn't need to be on everything. I really don't care. We're raising him up. And so, this fall, the game plan is to hand over Sundays to him. Man. And so,
at which location?
About that. For Dundalk.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I'll stay out in Towson.
That's another unconventional thing. Like, it's an era of celebrity pastors, even whether they want to be or not. But what I've seen in you is the time I was with you in Towson and Dundalk is gets up before the sun, like prepares, preaches one message, gets in your car, and immediately drives 25 minutes to the next one. Yeah. That's not normal, man. I think that's not normal.
The green room is my car, man. So a lot of dudes got green rooms. I just got a restroom in my car. So.
I remember sending you a lot of texts from the Dundalk location, be like, hey, man,
how close?
Do we need to play another song or where are we at?
Yeah, plan for 10 songs, and hopefully I don't get pulled over. But no,
Have you been?
Been good. I
Have
haven't.
you been pulled over from church to church?
I haven't. This is where I should probably enter like super spiritual mode and just be like, the Lord has provided.
Or because you never break the speed limit?
Of course.
Obviously,
I mean,
you
why
wouldn't do
would
that.
they pull me over, Josh? I can't even. I'm insulted by the question. Who's running this place?
You got to give them a reason, man. All right, so let's take a second and talk about, we've just been throwing names around.
Mm-hmm.
Pastor Tolly Wilgus, pastor of Captivate Church, still captivatechurch.com.
It is.
Okay. And we got a location in Towson at the Cinemark. We got a location on East Baltimore. What's the street or the address
400 North Luzerne Avenue,
Okay.
McElderry Park.
Gotcha. And then Dundalk, what's our address there? Dundalk, Maryland.
1710 Del Vale.
Okay, and if you're listening to this in like, I don't know, Japan, we're talking about Maryland. So
Yeah.
if
We can
you're
have a
here.
location in Japan too. If
Yeah.
somebody wants to open up a building.
And he will go on Sunday morning from
fly.
Dundalk to
Seriously, a fly. What's the time difference?
it'll be fine. Maybe it's yesterday or tomorrow there.
Oh, word. I
That
can
works out really
be a
good.
time traveler.
I would like
Sick
that.
of that.
All right, what is the thing? Let's get a little looser here. What's the most what thing is not at all like you thought it would be when you started ministry? You had this expectation, maybe you built it up, and it is just not even close.
Man, that's a good question. I don't know, because then you're asking me to go back and remember what I thought ministry is supposed to be like. I don't know. I think ministry exposes who you, who you really are, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're young or when you're first starting out, you don't really actually fully know what's in there yet. And so it's taking the bumps and bruises. It's failing at some things. I know a lot of my ministries that were in the South before I got up here, everything I touched turned to gold. I was that golden boy kid. That's why I planted a church at 25. Like, who follows a 25-year-old pastor?
Yeah.
But people did, but it was in the South, you know, so Texas and Virginia.
Yeah.
And then so you come up to Baltimore and you get slapped in the face. Like, up here, people don't care. Like, in the South, if people are listening from the South, I mean, when I get down there to preach, they ask me to preach on moralism. Like, help our people see the difference between being moral and being a Christian, right?
Wow.
Up here, nobody asked me to preach that. Like, nobody ever says our people are just too nice and too good, but they need the gospel. No, like, up here, if people don't care, they'll tell you, I don't care. I think you're smoking something.
Yeah.
Like, you're not, whatever, you're worshiping a fairy tale. So
Yeah.
anyway, so that's a huge difference. And then I think, how do you recover? You know, you don't really know until you get punched in the gut.
Oh my gosh,
Tyson
yeah.
said that everybody's got a plan until they get hit in the face.
Yeah.
So
That's
you
what
get hit in the
Baltimore
face.
does. We hit you in the face.
Absolutely. And it's a blessing. Like, we're helping you figure out who you are.
Yeah. So I'm from Florida, born and raised, and everyone says the same thing. Florida's not Southern. Well, you didn't grow up where I did. It's all pickup trucks and dogs in cages in the back and hog hunting.
Dogs in cages.
Yeah. So anyway, I grew up in that gentle, kind, sometimes often fake, like Southern hospitality. So when I came here, I tell everyone, for the first year, I legitimately thought everyone hated me. And it took a while, and I realized, like, oh, they're not going to talk to me unless they have a reason. They're busy. They're going somewhere. They don't do that here.
Who are you? Who are you? Why are you looking at me? Why are you smiling? Why are you asking me questions?
So we're tearing Baltimore apart, but we love it. So tell me why you love Baltimore. Give me some bullet points or some what just gets you pumped about being here, living here, being from here.
I think that, so honestly, that same raw vibe, I love it. Like, I'm the type of person that I just love to know where I stand with everybody. I grew up in an environment in O'Donnell Heights housing projects where if you didn't know who was with you and who wasn't, you'd get stabbed in the back. And
Literally,
okay. This isn't
Let's be
figurative.
clear, they're not going to talk about you.
The crazy thing is, then I got into like the Christian world, like behind the scenes, and I was like, they're more scary than the streets are. Because in the Christian world, they'll tell you to your face you're amazing and they love you.
Absolutely.
And then they'll really stab you in the back. Like, so I love the fact that Baltimore's transparent. I love the fact that people say, hey, this is who I am, and you love it or lump it. And so for me, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, even the eclectic differences. I love the fact that there's so many communities and neighborhoods from, East Baltimore and West Baltimore. They're not a monolith. They're very different areas. You look at some of I call it a pizza slice from like Towson down into the harbor. It's kind of this this white bastion that people try to pull away from the urban area. But then inside of all of those areas, they got their own quirks, you know, Remington and Hamden, and work your way on up.
I mean, I've been punched in the face in Parkville. So
yeah, you can get hurt everywhere. So no, but I just love the fact that it's just different. Everybody's got a good, healthy pride about who they are, where they're from, what they're about. And man, I just love the raw authenticity of that. And geographically, man, we're placed. You got the ocean, you got mountains nearby.
Yep.
10 minutes, you know, north, you can get to watch some horses. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I married a Maryland girl, and I think that's when the real transition started. Like living in Maryland was one thing, but then when you're married to a Baltimore girl, you're right. Mm-hmm. She's not one to just protect my feelings. If there's something going on, she's going to talk to me about it.
Yeah, feelings are fickle, man. They come and go.
It's awesome. So Steven, hi Steven, he's over there. You can't see him. We don't put a camera on Steven, but he's beautiful.
He's beautiful.
Steven, you're our media director, but that means a lot of things. You're one of a couple guys who's in charge of all the technology here, right? He's the only reason you're hearing or seeing this, because if it were Tali and I with cameras and mics, we'd waste a good hour and a half and go home.
A couple of GoPros.
You've been around this stuff forever. I've seen, tech shift at your church, at many churches. What do you think is next in technology? Like, it seems to drive ministry more and more. It drives everything, really. But in a church, we've gone. So I was saying the other day, I remember going from hymnals to remember the overhead projector where you slide the sheet up, the transparency,
Absolutely.
like one line at a time. What's working for you now, or is anything working for you now, and what's next? How much do you think about that stuff now?
Not a lot, actually. But no, holograms are going to be cool. Like, once we nail that, like, then you talk about a multi-site, man. Good night.
You don't have to travel at all then.
No.
It's perfect.
You just have a cage spinning around a dude with cameras on it, and he can
But
just walk
would you
around.
have a hologram of Tupac next to you?
Absolutely.
That looks freaky real.
Absolutely. Yes. Tupac that's what I grew up on, man. Now you're speaking my language. Now the podcast is getting real.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Hey, we hope you enjoyed that time with Pastor Tali Wilgus. We hope you enjoyed your time with the Reframe Podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you enjoy the content. You can find us on all the places where you generally find podcasts. Again, if you want to email us any questions or comments about what we're doing here, feel free. And we'll see you next time.